What if the most important development in a conflict isn't another missile launch, but the sudden absence of one? According to the uploaded source, after 13 consecutive nights of reported American airstrikes against targets inside Iran, military operations unexpectedly paused. There was no declaration of victory, no formal peace agreement, and no detailed public explanation. Instead, officials reportedly described the campaign as being on hold, a phrase that raised more questions than it answered. The documentary argues that this pause should not automatically be interpreted as the end of the conflict. Rather, it presents the suspension of operations as a potentially significant strategic decision occurring during an increasingly complex regional confrontation. The source suggests that military pauses often serve multiple purposes simultaneously, including reassessing operational priorities, evaluating available resources, and creating opportunities for diplomatic engagement while preserving future military options. These interpretations reflect the analytical perspective of the uploaded material rather than independently verified conclusions. A central theme throughout the documentary is escalation management. According to the transcript, discussions reportedly took place among senior American political and military officials regarding possible expansion of military operations beyond the existing campaign. The source describes reports of wider strike options and broader military objectives being considered before concerns about long-term strategic consequences reportedly influenced decision-making. While these accounts are attributed to reporting cited within the source, some details remain subject to ongoing public discussion and independent verification. The documentary also emphasizes that modern conflicts are shaped by more than battlefield capability alone. Military planning increasingly depends upon logistics, industrial production, defensive inventories, alliance commitments, and economic resilience. According to the uploaded source, these broader strategic considerations may sometimes become just as important as tactical success during active military operations. Sustaining prolonged campaigns requires balancing immediate objectives with future readiness across multiple regions simultaneously. Another recurring argument involves diplomacy. The source notes that while some officials publicly describe the operational pause as creating space for negotiations, public statements from Iranian officials presented a significantly different interpretation of the situation. This contrast illustrates how opposing governments may describe the same developments in fundamentally different ways while pursuing their respective strategic objectives. Whether the operational pause ultimately becomes a turning point or only a temporary interruption remains uncertain. What is clear from the uploaded source is that military silence, particularly during periods of sustained conflict, can itself become an important strategic signal deserving careful analysis rather than simple assumptions. According to the uploaded source, the temporary pause in military operations does not necessarily indicate that tensions have disappeared. Instead, the documentary argues that modern conflicts often enter periods of strategic reassessment where governments evaluate military resources, diplomatic opportunities, and long-term objectives before determining their next course of action. In this interpretation, silence may represent preparation rather than resolution. One of the documentary's central themes is military sustainability. The source discusses reports that prolonged operations can place significant demands on advanced defensive systems, precision-guided munitions, and logistical support. According to the transcript, senior military leaders reportedly considered not only the feasibility of expanding military operations, but also the broader implications for maintaining readiness across multiple regions where commitments already exist. These assessments represent the analytical perspective presented in the uploaded material and remain subject to ongoing public discussion. The documentary also examines the diplomatic dimension of the pause. It notes that while some American officials reportedly described the operational suspension as creating space for diplomacy, public statements from Iranian officials characterize the situation differently. According to the source, these contrasting narratives illustrate how governments may pursue different strategic objectives while simultaneously communicating very different messages to domestic and international audiences. Another important argument concerns the wider regional environment. The uploaded source suggests that developments involving maritime security, energy transportation, regional partners, and international trade remain closely connected to the broader conflict. It argues that even when direct military activity temporarily decreases, economic uncertainty, diplomatic negotiations, and regional security concerns may continue shaping international decision-making. From this perspective, the consequences of the conflict extend well beyond military operations alone. Ultimately, the documentary reaches a broader conclusion. It argues that future developments may depend less on dramatic military announcements than on quieter decisions involving logistics, diplomacy, industrial capacity, and political calculations made behind closed doors. Whether the present pause eventually leads to renewed negotiations, further military activity, or another period of strategic uncertainty cannot yet be determined. The uploaded source presents these possibilities as scenarios for analysis rather than predictions of future events. History often remembers major conflicts through decisive battles. Yet, as the documentary suggests, some of the most consequential moments occurred during periods when little appears to be happening publicly. Behind that apparent calm, governments continue evaluating risks, allocating resources, weighing diplomatic options, and preparing for future decisions. In that sense, the silence itself may become one of the most important developments to understand, not because it guarantees what comes next, but because it reminds us that strategy is often shaped long before the next headline appears.